So this game has taken the best close combat experience in VR and turned it up to 11. Blade Sorcery just got its big 1.0 update, bringing it out of early access, but this is not to be confused with a version available on the MetaQuest store called Blade Sorcery Nomad. That game will get this update in the future, and it'll be worth the wait because the full release brings an improved magic system and story-ish progression mode, amongst other things. Before I get into it, be warned, this game is notoriously brutal and this review might not be for the squeamish. That said, let's start by talking about the theme. The developers were really careful not to call the new Crystal Hunt progression mode a story mode, because while there is a story element to it, aside from optionally learning about your foes as you go, you're not really progressing through a story in the traditional sense. As the game's name would suggest, this game is set in a medieval fantasy world. There are 3 factions that are all after these powerful crystals, and you just happen to be in the perfect position to steal these crystals right from under their noses. Of course, each faction has its own reasons for wanting these crystals, but they're really just stepping stones on your path to ultimate power, because why let them have all the fun and power when you can grab it for yourself, right? If you're big on lore though and don't care about the factions, this game has something for everyone in the form of ancient Dalgarian text. Throughout your adventures, you'll find these magic stone tablets with mysterious text on them, and you have 2 options. You can set the game to automatically translate the text when you pick up the tablets, or you can go the hardcore route and translate it yourself. If I had to guess, the manual method involves matching each Dalgarian symbol with a letter from some alphabet, but if you're into puzzles and want a deeper dive into this lore, translating the text yourself might be a fun challenge. You know, as long as you're prepared to dive in and out of your headset to write down your findings in a notebook to keep track of it. If you're not into puzzle solving though, you'll definitely enjoy the core gameplay mechanic here. There's no dancing around it. Combat in this game feels absolutely incredible. Both magic and close combat are extremely fun and ridiculously immersive compared to similar combat experiences. When you swing a weapon, block an attack, or blast someone with magic, it all feels so fluid. The hit detection is spot on and the animations are smooth. In fact, I intentionally avoided this game since the beginning of 2024 because I knew this update was coming and I wanted a fresh take on it. That said, these animations are smoother than I remember, and each strike feels as impactful as they felt before, so it's nice to see that hasn't changed. Speaking of impact, the magic in this game is insanely versatile. Everyone has telekinesis by default and it allows you to manipulate objects around you. You can pick up loose weapons, chairs, and other objects to either bring them to you or drop them on someone. Of course, the bigger and heavier the object, the harder it is to move, but you can improve your telekinesis skills using the game's new skill tree system. Instead of just getting a boring menu here, you get an experience that feels like it's actually a part of the world. Each skill is represented by a node floating around crystals you get in the Crystal Hunt mode, and as you get more, you can unlock new elements or improve existing ones. It's a visually appealing way to develop your character, and it feels really rewarding to see how powerful you become like this. There's actually a lot of things I wanted to record for this review, but I had to force myself to stop. Just knowing there's so much I didn't get to try out before posting this though is exciting in itself. And speaking of exciting, magic can be combined to create some seriously devastating effects. If you avoid the sandbox arena mode and don't research any of the spells online, you can spend hours in this game just unlocking the different elements and learning new spell combinations. That said, the combat in this game is physics driven, and this is hands down the most entertaining combat experience I've had in VR, though it's not always the most visually appealing. The way the environment looks in general is noticeably on the lacking side. The flat looking grass and uninspired rock textures aren't going to blow you away, but the weapons are not at all what they seem at first. The textures look flat and unimpressive when you're glancing at them, but when you get up close, the details really come to life here. The scratches on the blades, the intricate design on the hilts, the visible wear and tear that shows these weapons have seen some serious action. It's all here. So while these weapons may not look like much from afar, especially the rusted ones, up close you can tell there's a lot of character here. This attention to detail adds a lot to the immersion factor, especially when you're holding these weapons right in front of your face in VR. Then there's the magic. It's usually in your face, so it's nice that the magic looks great here. Casting spells in this game looks absolutely amazing because the effects are vibrant and dynamic, which is exactly what you'd expect from magic in real life, you know, if it were actually real. But the fireballs look like they're actually ablaze with intense heat, and the lightning sparks in a way that genuinely makes you want to avoid getting hit by it. It's crazy because all of the spells are like this. They all have this amazing style that's both expected but original. It's too bad your hardware might detract from that a bit though. One thing to keep in mind is that this game can be very demanding, even for higher end PCs. I'm not sure if it's the intense physics, but playing this game on high settings with no frame rate drops would require a minimum of an RTX 4070 or RX 7800 XT if you prefer the AMD equivalent. But if you're playing on a rig that's anywhere near minimum specs for VR, you can expect a very watered down experience since you'll likely be turning all of these settings down. The good news is that if you absolutely have to, there's plenty of options to dial in your playstyle. Now, this game shows you in real time how it's running, which is something every performance-dependent VR game should have in 2024. Being able to see the impact of your settings in real time is an absolute game changer. You can adjust everything from image upscaling to shadows, and if these settings don't smooth out your gameplay, you can go a step further and modify the settings used by the game's physics engine, like adjusting the number of bodies or even the quality of the physics themselves. Physics calculations can be pretty taxing on hardware, so having the ability to tweak these settings is again a game changer for getting that perfect balance between performance and visual fidelity. There are other settings here as well, like the ability to control the spawn percentages of male and female NPCs. I don't know why a setting like this would matter, but it's nice to have this level of customization along with gore controls. This game can be pretty gruesome with lots of intense combat and gore, but if that's not your thing, you have the option to hide blood effects or turn off dismemberment altogether. This setting is for you if you don't have the stomach for that kind of stuff, and it's great that the developers went this extra mile since quite a few gamers can't actually handle this level of gore. And then there's the volume controls. You can adjust the music, sound effects, ambience, and cool enough for the first time in VR, you can adjust the music stinger volume. If you're wondering what that is, it's the sound effect that plays to emphasize an important moment, like the dramatic sound that plays when the golem wakes up for the first time. And since we're talking about audio, let's touch on that next. When it comes to sound effects in this game, they aren't exactly groundbreaking, but they do their job, and when you expect to hear a sound, you hear it. Whether it's the clashing of blades, the whoosh of spells flying by, or the environmental noises like bees near a beehive, it's all there. There's a wide variety of sound effects here, and it makes the game feel more alive than it actually is. One thing I noticed though is that the sound effects and music are a bit too loud straight out of the box. When you first start playing, you might find that the audio levels are a bit on the louder side, especially in VR where everything feels more intense. I'd recommend turning the volume down on both music and sound effects before jumping in spells blazing, since this will help balance things out and make longer play sessions more tolerable. This game does have voice acting though, but it's primarily in the form of one NPC. The countless people you'll likely unalive before you finish your playthrough do make human-like noises and sounds, but it's not exactly speech. There is the shopkeeper though, which you meet pretty early on in the game, and in addition to being a fountain of information, he sells you things. It's not much, but it's well done.
Only the finest, Eric.
Overall, the audio is pretty solid, but nothing magical, though there's already a lot of magic in this game. If you're wondering how this game stacks up to other VR titles though, I've got you covered. Between the realistic physics and raw combat, this game is very immersive. Theme gets a 5 out of 6 because they nailed the fantasy sword fighting aspect of a fantasy combat game. It would have been nice to have an actual story instead of a progression mode, but they made it clear what we were getting from the get-go, so that is what it is. Mechanics gets a 5 out of 6 because between the immersively designed skill tree, dynamically fun combat, and generally intuitive playstyle of this game, it's all pretty well done. There are little physics related nuances like your body getting stuck on things or climbing occasionally being more of a chore than it should be, but none of that takes away too much from the experience. Options gets a 5 out of 6. It would have gotten a perfect score, but the crucial option missing here is no teleportation movement. I personally don't use it, but I know how important it can be in avoiding motion sickness. Other than that, the real-time performance tracker and abundance of other options don't go unappreciated. Graphics gets a 4 out of 6. The environments might not be the best looking, and the visuals might be on the demanding side, but the enemies, weapons, and equipment are pretty good looking and help the immersion factor. And audio gets a 5 out of 6. The music matches the mood and there is a sound effect for everything. Plus the shopkeeper's voice acting isn't half bad either. Loud volumes are loud, but that's what settings are for. All of that said, Blade Sorcery gives virtual reality exactly what it needs right now, which is a fun game with longevity and replayability. This game has earned an immersion score of 5 out of 6, but that's not factoring in mod support. In terms of mods, this game might as well be Skyrim, but mods are not original to the game, so they have no impact on any of these scores. Still, the foundation is here, and I think with the right mods installed, this game could be the best VR game available. I'm looking forward to see what the massive modding community does with this game, but until then, you should check out some of my other reviews. Impale the like button if you like this game or plan on picking it up, and until next time, stay immersed.